fly I'm going to be tying up this morning is going to be a Greenwell Glory. This is a wonderful nymph pattern. I've got a size 16 hook in the vise here, and I'm starting out with just some extra small copper wire. I don't want to crowd the eye, so I do want that to stop right about there. And we're going to go ahead and use this to build up a little bit of an area where our thorax is going to be. But we're also going to keep a tag end in place, and we're going to use that to finish the fly off. So I don't need to go overly crazy here with this. It's going to give us some additional weight, which is going to be helpful just to help this sink down. You could use lead if you'd like. You can see I've got a nice long tag end here. Being small, just give that a couple of bendies back and forth, and it's going to break itself right off for you. I'll just go ahead and put that to the side. And what I'm going to use for the thread and for the body on this is just going to be some yellow silk. Really great material to tie with. I'm going to go ahead and start that right back there behind the eye. And then I'm just going to go ahead and go over that copper thorax that we just put into place until it jumps right off the back end there, just like that. Once I've got that off the back end there, I'll just go ahead and come in here with my scissors and we'll cut off the balance, or our tag end. I will be turning my thread counterclockwise, the silk thread counterclockwise, from time to time, just to help flatten it out a little bit. And I'm going to bring this right back to where it aligns with the barb of the hook. I do have the barb on here. It'll be mashed down before I fish with it. But it's a good measuring point. That's, you know, you let your thread dangle and you want it right where that gouge of that hook point is. I'm just going to go ahead and bring that back up forward, not overly concerned right at the moment about touching thread wraps, but we do want to keep this relatively clean. So we're going to tie in some pheasant tail here. I've got this attached to my pheasant tail, well-used pheasant tail. By holding these fibers kind of perpendicular to the shaft of that feather, you'll see that the ends line up pretty nicely. And once I've got those in that orientation, I'm going to actually pinch them right there to keep that, and then I can just strip the rest of these, in theory, off of my feather. And you don't have to do this. This is just me, but I'll sometimes square off those curlies just because they're messy looking and can sometimes get in the way, but I'm going to be cutting off a lot more than that actually on the pattern. So once I've got those cut off, I'm going to look at length, and for length here I want these to be relatively short. So maybe about 1/2 to 3/4 of the length of the shank of the hook. I'm going to try to keep those fibers on the top. After a couple of wraps, I'm going to just double check that I've got the nice little stubby tail that I'm wanting. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to work on keeping those tails on the top of our hook shank as we work our way back to where our abdomen's going to start here. So you notice I'm kind of just pulling up on those a little bit. That just helps me ensure I'm getting those right on the top of the shank of my hook. Turning my thread counterclockwise again, just trying to flatten out again, primarily back here at this back end, because I do want to taper. So I want this fairly narrow back here. And with that, I'll just go ahead and kind of work my way back up. My hook shank here. And I'll probably take a couple of runs back down and back up to just kind of help us with that taper. So I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm going to go about that far, and then I'm going to come back up. Keeping my thread, turning it counterclockwise. And I'm going to take it back down just a tiny little ways and then back up. You can see that we've got a nice taper created there. We've got our tag end. We've got our nice little stubby tail, which is exactly what I was looking for. And keep these pheasant tail fibers in place because we're going to end up using them. So next I'm going to just grab I've got a hare's mask here. And I've got this wonderful little kind of comb. And basically if you just kind of run that comb through your hare's mask, it's going to just pull out some fibers for you for a really nice dubbing. You can kind of see I do want some of those guard hairs to stay in there, so I'm not going to try to get rid of those because I do want this thorax that we're about ready to begin to be semi-buggy. And those guard hairs are just perfect for that. With this, I'm just going to finger dub this on. I'm not going to dub it on incredibly tight because I do want it to be a little bit buggy looking. And I probably have too much, but that's okay. We'll work on that. I can take some dubbing off if and where I might need to. So you can see I'm just going to continue to kind of tighten it up a little bit, but not excessively, as I move up and create this thorax. What I'm really looking for is to make sure that I don't underdo the thorax and that it's not as pronounced as what I really want it to be. So we're creating this nice little ball of a thorax here. We've got some of those guard hairs that coming out, just kind of like I wanted it. Okay. So once we get to this point, now I can go ahead and grab my piece of copper wire, and I'm going to take some fairly open wraps up through this yellow silk. It's just going to create the hint of a rib. I'm going to make these wraps fairly open. If anything, they're evenly open, or they maybe get a little bit wider the further you move up. And I'm going to bring that right up to behind our thorax here. And then I'm going to take my fibers that are over the eye of the hook, and we're going to go ahead and pull them back. And we're going to use this copper wire to kind of secure them onto the top of the shank of the hook here. Just like that. And then I'm just going to take a few more wraps over the top of all of that, moving up towards the eye of the hook here. I'm going to take a couple of wraps to secure that copper wire down. Should be able to break this off now. Being extra small, it should be extra easy. Just go ahead and put some tension on it and kind of let that friction do its thing. Here I'm going to go ahead and wax my thread. It's just going to help us grip the material a little bit better. I'll just go ahead and stroke that kind of up. With that, I'm going to take the pheasant tail fibers. We're going to go ahead and bend those over the top, creating our wing case. Maybe take a wrap or two underneath, but then I'm going to go back right over the top. With that, I'll just come on in with my scissors. We'll cut off the butt ends of that pheasant tail. Going to throw a little bit more wax on just to make sure that we're gripping fairly well. We'll work on covering those up a little bit. And I don't mind this having a little bit of a pronounced head like that. So I've got that where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and reach in with my whip finisher now. And these turns are going to be back towards the wing case more than any place else. I only need a few wraps here. Just like that. And come on in with my handy thread cutter. A wonderful pattern. Sometimes what I will do is maybe come in with a dubbing brush just to brush out a few of those fibers. I don't want to go to town on this. I don't want to break my wing case by going over the top of it too much. But to create that kind of under the thorax kind of leggy look. With that, we're going to call it good. So wonderful nymph pattern. Really interesting new techniques on how to tie, kind of using that copper to not only rib and give us some weight, but also to kind of hold our wing case in place. Throw a hook in your vise and give this one a try.